The lottery is commonly referred to as a tax on people who are bad at math, and with the odds of winning the Powerball at 1 in 259 million, that certainly seems to be the case. But what if, rather than 1 in 259 million, the odds were 1 in 1,000, or even 1 in 100? Gacha games are games that focus on randomly acquired in-game items or characters that can be rolled in exchange for in-game currency or items. And in some players' eyes, getting exactly what you need in these games is equivalent to winning the lottery, and can be exponentially more expensive. The name comes from the Japanese name for a capsule toy vending machine, where customers will put in money to get a random toy or object, usually as part of a set, and they make millions of dollars annually. Gacha video games, on the other hand, have been gaining steam over the last decade as well, with titles like Genshin Impact, Fire Emblem Heroes, and the omnipresent Raid Shadow Legends being some relatively recent additions to the genre that have been performing exceptionally well, with players attempting to get as far as possible or collect the full set of characters the game has available. Unlike other genres of video games, these titles are typically free to play, and the revenue primarily comes in the form of microtransactions that are pushed by way of manipulating the psychology of those who play them. Progression in gacha games typically revolves around upgrading the characters and gear available to the player, but unlike RPGs or action titles where you can complete missions or progress through a campaign to unlock new things, your growth is largely random in gacha games. The values of characters or items are commonly attributed to star values, with 1 star being the weakest and the most common, and 5 or 6 stars being the strongest and in turn the rarest. The easy-to-understand star system that assigns value to the in-game objects makes it so people who don't normally play video games understand that every time you exchange currency for a roll of the dice, you're looking for those 4 or 5 star outcomes, no matter how unlikely they may be. Sure, the beginning of the game will be easy, progression will be fast with some characters or items offered for free to every player, resources will be plentiful, beginner missions will offer plenty of opportunity to roll the dice to get more exclusive characters, and winning the game makes you feel good. But every gacha game has a cutoff point, where your progression will begin to stall, you won't win every encounter you experience anymore, and you've completed every beginner mission that offered opportunities for quick growth. Most players won't have noticed at this point that the psychological manipulation has already begun, and it's inherently present in gacha games in general. It begins with a neurotransmitter called dopamine that is used to send messages between nerve cells. These messages revolve around the ability to feel pleasure and help control the desire to do or get certain things, for example, eating food or exercising. Gambling also triggers the brain's reward system to release dopamine, creating a sense of thrill from the moment you press the roll option in these games. The rush of gambling will provide dopamine, and that will be reinvigorated as soon as you get a valuable character or item.
Let's go! Let's fucking go! Oh my god, I'm a saxophone!
Which is why the majority of gacha games out there guarantee a 4 or 5 star pull early on, introducing new players to what is possible if they keep playing. So say you keep playing, your progression begins to stall, whether that's in completing the campaign or collecting the last piece of a set that you need, and you begin to curse your luck, and that if you had just one more 4 or 5 star, you could keep going and keep progressing, but you've run out of in-game currency to try to seek out that last unit. This is the point where the game begins to test your patience. Gacha games typically have daily missions or special events that are ways to get more in-game currency and keep the player engaged, but it is not a fast or efficient way to make any progress, as fast progress is exclusively achieved by busting out your wallet. Every player must make a choice at this point to either wait it out and progress slowly, or pony up and buy more of the currency using real-life dollars. Many players are able to resist the urge and just wait, but for those who are more susceptible to it, the impulse can be too much, and they end up shelling out money in exchange for progression. Many of the games offer a pity mechanic, where after a certain amount of pulls, the next one is guaranteed to contain something valuable, further incentivizing the feeling of spending being worth it for that immediate reward. But as more pulls are performed, a player begins to develop a gambling tolerance, which is where the brain becomes more accustomed to the dopamine being produced by playing the game, and it stops creating the same amount of thrill that was originally provided, reducing the amount of pleasure that the individual experiences from the same stimulus as before. You'd think this is a good thing, and that it means that the player would notice that they're not enjoying trying to randomly get new characters or items as much as they once did, and stop playing or become more patient. But the opposite is actually true. This marks the beginning of episodes of impulses and cravings, as the brain has become used to the amount of pleasure derived from the previously produced amount of dopamine, and wants to get back to that same response because it feels good. With the increased stimulus gated behind a paywall, some players begin to rationalize spending more on the game, with tiered packages available at different costs or exclusive discounted deals available to players at different points in their progression. Many gacha games have options for whatever amount a player would be willing to spend, whether that's $5 or $100. These deals are pushed on players constantly, with pop-ups reminding them of the bundles available, and there being constantly rotating deals that are only available for a limited time, causing people to fall prey to a concept known as artificial scarcity. Humans have a tendency to assign increased value to things that are not permanent, and there is a constant fear that they are missing out if they don't take action while it is available. The developers only offering a specific bundle for a day or a week causes people to naturally think it is more valuable than the transactions that are constantly around. And this can drive people to spend money on a bundle they otherwise wouldn't have purchased, just because they don't want to miss out on something that will be gone soon. The problem here is that players are just feeding more into their initial problem, with each subsequent purchase increasing their dopamine tolerance, requiring more and more stimulus to create the same response in the future, and resulting in addiction. Someone could start off buying a $5 special deal that popped up on their screen because it was a better value than whatever was available in the regular store. But that's the same as a drug dealer offering you the first hit for free because they know it'll get you hooked. That $5 purchase can quickly become $25, then $100 total, then $100 in a single purchase because of how much more stimulus you'll need to get the same response. Over time, continuous responses to these stimuli result in the brain reducing the number of dopamine receptors you have to adjust for the increased dopamine in your system. The reduced amount of receptors can result in an individual not enjoying activities they previously found pleasure in, as the part of the brain that accounts for enjoyment is less receptive to dopamine from all sources, not just the one that caused the problem in the first place. It's a very real possibility that spending money on microtransactions can lead to you enjoying your favorite food less. Which sounds completely ridiculous without digging into the science behind it. Drugs and gambling both stimulate the same reward center in the brain and release dopamine. The outcome of building a tolerance and requiring more and more to achieve the same result functions in the same way. And the compulsion to get that rush again and again can be utterly disastrous to the lives of those who suffer from this form of addiction. So say that you've noticed on your bank statement that you spent $500 on microtransactions in Genshin Impact in the last month, and decided that it's time to slow down or stop entirely. This is where the concept of withdrawals come in. Most of us think of withdrawals as something exclusive to drugs, but even gambling can create both mental and physical symptoms including depression, anxiety, insomnia, sweating, headaches, difficulty breathing, tremors, and nausea. The absence of dopamine stimulating your brain can create these as the brain attempts to reconfigure itself to its old state, and the disconnection from the thrill can lead to not only the potential for relapse, but the potential to seek out other unhealthy behaviors to try to curb their suffering. The memory of the incredible feeling of the rush will always be there, and it can be all but impossible for some to resist the temptation. Studies have ascertained that certain people are inherently more vulnerable to this form of addiction, due to genetic or psychological predispositions. Anyone who has an underactive reward system is significantly more likely to fall into this trap and spend insane amounts of money, and it's those individuals that make these gacha-style games so successful. Mobile game revenue can be analyzed by something called the average revenue per paying user, and tracks how much money a normal player who has ever put money into the game is willing to spend. But these numbers are incredibly inflated due to the 0.1% of the player base who makes up more than 50% of the total revenue for mobile games. These super users are colloquially known as whales, and can spend upwards of $1,000 per month on the games that they play. The majority of players for these games don't spend any money at all, but a recent study has found that the top 5% of paying players spend about $66 per player per day on average. Stretching that out over the course of a month shows that this small proportion of the overall player base is dropping almost $2,000 per player per month. The average revenue per paying user has increased significantly in recent years, but the median value has remained the same since 2016, implying that gacha games haven't been convincing more people to spend significant amounts of money, but rather have gotten better at manipulating those who are already spending into dropping even more on the game. This is an incredibly dishonest practice, as the strategies these games use to take advantage of people suffering from addiction are despicable. The goalposts are always moving, with new releases or special events that require even more spending. The fact that the rarest releases are typically the most powerful, the carrot on a stick mechanic provided by the pity feature where just a little bit more spending can guarantee what you need, and the odds of achieving your goals without spending seeming so far away creates an environment that can drain a user of hundreds of thousands of dollars without them ever feeling fully satisfied. Addiction is an illness, and for many players, it's not as simple as just uninstalling the game and not thinking about it. For anyone who is suffering with a gacha game or gambling issue in general, I've put some resources in the description that are available if you want to seek help. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to the channel. It's totally free, and you can always unsubscribe if you want to. Plus, it really helps me understand what kind of content people want to see. With that though, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you later.